What's up, homies? Welcome back to another video from Heroes Reforged. We've got another very special interview today. I'm loving these interview series that we're doing. We're getting some insight into the stuff that we love. We talked to Robert Kirkman about Invincible, and now we're going to be talking to another amazing artist involved on the making of some of our favorite things, but in particular, WandaVision. Hector, tee up our amazing guest.
This is really incredible. It's not often that we get to chat with folks who are working in that sort of pre-production side of our favorite movies and TV shows. But this guest is a storyboard artist who's worked on our favorite stuff like Deadpool 2, Game of Thrones, The Flash, and also WandaVision, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and She-Hulk. I'm so excited. We have Jeremy Simser here with us. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Well, thanks for having me on. This should be super fun.
Jeremy, you got to storyboard WandaVision and then afterwards work on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and then you're going into She-Hulk, but we'll get to that later. But I also know that between WandaVision and Doctor Strange, that was not the continuity that Marvel chose for you, but rather you really went out there and you got the Doctor Strange gig like completely on your own. How did you get involved with both of these projects?
All right, let's start with WandaVision. WandaVision was pretty straightforward. When NBC rebooted Heroes several years ago now, into Heroes Reborn, that was the first time that I worked with Matt Shakman, and he and I worked together extremely well, to the point that basically anything that he's worked on subsequently that he's needed storyboards for, I'm his guy. He's called me, and I've done him. I make room for Matt Shakman in my schedule no matter what I'm working on. So that was great because that led to, from Heroes Reborn to an episode of American Gothic, and then a couple of other things, a couple of pilots to Game of Thrones, which was the big one. So when he got the call for Game of Thrones, I then got the call for Game of Thrones. And I mean, how much better it's great to have a guy like Matt in your corner. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you're his hired gun. That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like I say, I mean, when Matt calls, I do it, and that's all there is to it. And we've made some great things as a result. Doctor Strange was a slightly different setup. I actually was a little more active in sort of pursuing that job, and that's shortly after Doctor Strange 1 came out. I had heard through the grapevine here in Vancouver, British Columbia, that Scott Derrickson was going to be coming to Vancouver to shoot a pilot for Snowpiercer, which is currently on TNT. So I basically reached out to the production very early on in the game of them setting up and said, hey, I would love to come and do some storyboard work on the show if you need somebody. And about a month later, maybe 2 weeks, a month later, they called me up and said, yeah, Scott's here. He needs some storyboards done. They had done a whole bunch of previous boards in LA, but now that he was up here, the reality of sets and all that type of stuff and shooting something in an actual space, so they asked me to come in and do some revisions. So Scott and I worked together on that for 4 to 6 weeks, I think. Pretty short job, but it went really well. I thought we communicated well and had a good time working together. And so skip ahead a few years, and WandaVision is taking up all of my time, basically. And while I'm working on WandaVision, it is announced that Scott Derrickson was going to step on to do Doctor Strange 2. And I was just like, step 2. So basically, I sent him an email. I sent him an email just directly to him and said, I loved working with you on Snowpiercer. I thought that we worked really well together. And if you have a place for me to do some storyboards for you for Doctor Strange 2, I would love to do it. And I actually never got an email back from him because he's a very busy man.
Clearly, yes.
But a producer on the show emailed me and asked me if I was available and would I like to do it. And I was just kind of at the point where we were starting to wrap up WandaVision. So this is going to sound really lame, but his people talk to my people, and the producers of the two shows talk to each other basically. And we worked out a deal where I overlapped both shows for a couple of, I think 2 weeks or maybe a month. And then I was on to Doctor Strange.
Do you feel like most people understand what your job is, or do you feel like you have to explain it to people? And how do you explain to people? Because I know for us, when whether it's our families or our friends or whatever, when people ask us like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, well, we make videos on YouTube and we talk about, and they're like, Is that a job? Like what
My
is that?
parents still don't
understand.
understand what we do here on YouTube. Like they don't.
I hear that. So I would say that there's a percentage of people who do know what a storyboard artist does and what it pertains to the job, I guess. But then, and this is actually what I love about conventions so much, is that you get people who come into these comic book conventions, essentially nerd conventions, and I say that with great affection, of course.
Of course.
That really just don't even know why they're there. So they're there because they like cosplay or they like comic books or whatever. And then they walk by my table and so many people just like this weird glazed over look on their eyes. Like, what is this guy? I don't understand what this is. So yeah, I get the opportunity to explain to a lot of people what it is that I do. And basically what I do is I draw pictures that represent a visual roadmap so that shooting a scene is as efficient as possible.
Love that.
Beautifully said.
That's fantastic. I tend to overcomplicate things given mine and Hector's animation background. I overcomplicate things only because I know kind of like the weight that a storyboarder carries, because to me personally, I love the genre or the filmmaking style of animation, because it relies so heavily on storyboarding, because you work out the story, you work out everything before you even put any kind of production to go on. So all the care and all the story beats and everything has to happen well before you even start production. So I personally love that, people like you are out here doing it, because I wish more people would use storyboards. I wish it would be like a standard across, all of filmmaking, because it really lets you focus on things that, like the important things that come out of film and creating art and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. It's funny. It's interesting because, I mean, obviously, not everything that I board ends up being in the final cut for whatever reason, but it's still very gratifying to know that I was part of the process. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get to put my creative energies into something that that ultimately I'm hopefully proud to see up there and that people like. And
Absolutely.
For me, so far in my life, anyways, WandaVision has been the ultimate culmination of that.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So,
okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
It is the thing to this point of things that have aired out to the public, that the public has seen. It is the thing that I am the most proud so far.
Wow.
That's awesome. You should be proud because it came out awesome. So
yes.
That's great.
And I see you're proudly wearing your WandaVision crew hoodie, which is awesome. Yeah. Does it have the WandaVision animation at the thing on the back too?
The Halloween
costumes. That's
we also have to shout out the Hyrule shirt. That's also classy as well. We really well.
My
Absolutely.
partner got me this when she was in New York a couple of years ago. And like, if that's not true love, then I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. right. Find yourself somebody who's going to buy you those kinds of shirts.
Absolutely.
What's something you were really proud of to actually end up seeing in the final version of the show that you pitched or came up with? That, finally once you saw, you were like, yes, that thing that I boarded, like that particular thing, that made it in, I'm so happy. And it really was a good representation of what you've envisioned.
I mean, I can't think of anything specific for WandaVision except for just like, I'm always like the way that Matt and I work is very collaborative as far as shots go. Like Matt will have an idea of what he wants and basically talk through his shot list, and with the caveat at the end that basically if you come up with something cool, throw it in and we'll see if it sticks, right? So in this particular situation, I had a lot of input in just how the boards and therefore the scenes sort of ended up being. Which is super fun. I can give you a couple of examples from previous shows if you want, but
sure, yeah.
Again, so Game of Thrones basically. So Game of Thrones is the scene that I did for Game of Thrones was the loot train sequence where Daenerys basically attacks Jaime Lannister's wagon train, and we really get to see some crazy dragon action for the first time on that show. Definitely the biggest set piece that they've done up until that point. And there was a couple of really nice shots that, in my opinion, that I came up with that ended up making the final cut. Like there's one where a guy takes a sword and like stabs it in towards camera like he's killing somebody, and then the dragon comes in and burns him up, right? Like I came up with that, and it ended up in the show, so that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And example number two, thanks. And example number two would be in Deadpool 2, which was a very free form sort of. If you thought of a gag they wanted to see it sort of situation. So my success rate was about 2% on that show, but that's because I was throwing so much stuff, right? But the bit where Deadpool takes his sword out and throws it at the kid and it knocks him on the forehead and he goes down, that was from my brain. So I'm proud of those.
Great.
That's cool.
Awesome.
That's fun.
That's cool. That's cool to see your work actually like influenced on screen. That's really cool.
And there's more to come. I can't talk about it right now, but there's more.
Okay, we're getting to that. We're getting to that.
Okay.
We're getting to that.
Maybe.
Now that the show is over, I don't want to get you in trouble. And I also know that when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they will revisit concepts from years and years ago. So the future is a big question mark. I know that. But now that WandaVision is over, is there anything that was in the development of the show that you either storyboarded or maybe didn't even get a chance to, that didn't make it into the final show, that you would have thought, that would have been really cool to see?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have one of these in my pocket, actually, and that Matt Shackman, the director of the show, has already spoken about this on another podcast. So I'm lucky in that sense. However, I will say that going into the final episode, what was the 10th episode when we started, but ended up being the 9th. You can ask me about that later if you want.
That was also recently revealed.
Also recently revealed. The final sequence, the finale, if you want to call it that, we went through a lot of revisions on that. So there was a whole bunch of different like takes on it, different points of view, how the characters interacted with Wanda and stuff like that. Ultimately, the action pretty much stayed mostly the same. Some stuff got scaled up, some stuff got scaled down, but I'm really happy with how it with the final version of what we got. That being said, what we did miss out on was Agatha's rabbit, Senor Scratchy, mutating, turning into a demon monster that Wanda was going to have to fight. And it was, I got to storyboard a little bit of that. And I think, yes, but on the other hand, from an editorial storytelling point of view, I honestly do think that it was the right choice to take that out. I think that for a show that really was about grief and dealing and family and all that stuff, a big rabbit fight at the end might not have been the best use of our time. Let's say that.
Yeah.
But listen, the MCU being what it is, we may see Catherine Hahn again. We may see that character again. We may get to see the Senor Scratchy monster thing. So hopefully if we do, it'll be you boarding it or some version of your boards. So
Jeremy, can you give us your best audio description of what this demon looked like? Like, paint the picture in my head.
So take the head of Donnie Darko, right? That mask that Donnie Darko wears. So that sort of demon-y kind of exaggerated rabbit form, and then put it on a sort of stringy, wiry rabbit body that's roughly the size of a Rottweiler or a Saint Bernard, basically.
Whoa!
I want this so bad. That's awesome.
That's gnarly.
I think my big thing, and I feel like it's such a tough sell, and I'm not saying that this has anything to do with that scene being omitted, but I feel like I'm really into like really weird, kooky, horror, crazy, oddball sort of stuff. You describing that, I'm like, that is what I want in that show. And now I'm so bummed that we won't. Maybe not never, but we won't see it at least. We obviously didn't get to see it.
It's funny that taking out the demon rabbit to keep the show more grounded is something that can be applied to a show in which we travel through sitcom world, and there's witches and magic and all of that stuff. But the demon rabbit was a bit.
They're like, you know what, that
character.
That's right.
Too much.
So did anything change in WandaVision based on what was being developed in Doctor Strange? Since you kind of had your feet in both ponds, did as stories progress in Doctor Strange, and given that COVID happened, did that kind of influence the things that you were doing on your side, or were you already done with storyboards by that point?
I'm not sure that anything necessarily changed. It was more a situation of them wanting to find out because actually I was a bit of a go-between between the storyboards on that had been done on WandaVision versus to Doctor Strange, and so I know that I did send them some of my storyboards from WandaVision. I sent to Doctor Strange so that they could either refer to them or however they used them. I don't really know. It's all above my pay grade again, but I do know that the two productions were communicating with each other while at the same time being quite independently produced. So.
Very cool.
Okay.
That's a nice diplomatic answer. That's great.
Wait, Adam, what did you want to ask?
Well, I mean, it's very much a similar type of question of like, because, WandaVision was originally positioned as like the 5th project in phase 4 and Doctor Strange coming right after. And then a lot of it obviously had shifted to being the first project. Did that, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but so like, did it have a really big effect on how quickly you had to now get your work done because of how much it shifted? Or was the process of like when it was going to be made and all that stuff, was it more or less similar-ish? Because I know that they took a break as well throughout a big chunk of 2020. Did that shift a lot of stuff for you as the artist, or was it did it all kind of like work out at the end?
I would say that it all just kind of worked out in the end, actually. I obviously nobody loves COVID. I mean, COVID's a big pain in everybody's butt, right?
Yeah.
So, that being said, when Doctor Strange and actually WandaVision for that matter too, when all the productions ended up going down, I believe that opportunities were taken on both shows, possibly both shows, to sort of refine and to take the time that they wouldn't necessarily have had otherwise to really sort of tweak and make things as good as they could.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's what was always in the back of my mind because us from our VFX background, it was always like a time crunch. There was never time to go back and rewrite things because it was always due yesterday. I feel like it's a good time to go back and rewrite and refine stuff and actually like put a little bit more time and care into things that might have, could have used a little bit of extra love in there.
Totally. It gave Matt the opportunity to storyboard some of the stuff that he wouldn't be shooting, because I think COVID would necessitate more a stronger second unit shooting presence on WandaVision just to make sure that everything got done. So stuff that he wouldn't necessarily have storyboarded, he got the opportunity to, and I think that just helped the production move a lot smoother.
That's cool.
I just want to say at this point that there is something early on in the workings of Doctor Strange 2 that I storyboarded that we ended up not using, that I, fingers crossed, we'll get to see at some point in the future movie. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever drawn. So.
What do you mean?
That's exciting.
You don't get to see it. You don't get to know.
The exciting thing about the franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think the reason fans get so excited about the littlest clues or hints or even like a casting choice, the fact that Monica Rambeau was cast the adult version of the character, I think fans pick up on, well, that means that the MCU could someday deliver on the rest of what that character eventually does. So I feel like if it's something, Jeremy, and knowing that you're such a big comic book guy, it's something that you love. I have a strong feeling, hopefully, that we will see it someday, and it very well could likely happen. Yeah, that's really cool.
Fingers crossed.
That's really cool.
So you were just talking about Doctor Strange and Sam Raimi. I know you can't say a lot, but after this, you can Doctor Strange mind wipe all of us, so that you don't break NDA. But the smallest nugget of your experience of Doctor Strange, do you have anything you could say?
It was a joy from beginning to end. Working on that show was fantastic. It was just to that point the most free that I've been able to express my own ideas. Like it was really a lot of, here, read this part of the script and then come back with a boarded sequence for us. And so I was like, okay, so that's cool. And then so you get a lot of reverse engineering in that sense, and that they take pieces and then they move forward with that. So while I say that I was throwing a lot of stuff at the wall to see what would stick, yes, very true. But you still get this. I mean, it's obvious that Sam Raimi is directing this movie. Do you know what I mean? So even though he's taking ideas these things are made by a very talented group of very, very many people, and everybody's bringing their creative elements in. Man, you should see I'm in awe every single time because of a sequence that I'm boarding or whatever. Every time that I get to see a stunt previs video that they've put together for one of those scenes that they're doing, I am in absolute shock and awe. These people are so talented. It's amazing. So it's great. So and like in this situation, like the director is, in the very clearest and purest sense of the word, the director. And in this case, Sam is letting people run and do their thing with his direction. And it's fantastic. And it was just it was a joy to be able to present ideas to people that I admire, and to have them go, oh, this is good. I like this. Let's use this.
That's so cool.
What I mean?
That's so awesome.
Yeah, super great. To the point that, like, by the time when I left the show, they had just started shooting, and it was the logical time for me to sort of wrap up, because I'd also gotten the call for She-Hulk 2 weeks before, so it seemed like the logical time to do it. But I'll be honest, I was a little sad to do it. I was a little sad to go. And there were, I think at one point or another, there were 8 storyboard artists working on Doctor Strange. So you can imagine.
Wow.
And I was on that show for a year. Including the COVID break, which was for me only about a month. So you can imagine the amount of stuff that is getting basically thrown at these people, at Sam, at the producers, at the visual effects people, for them to have to sift through and to be able to go, oh, scene 12, okay, that's cool, and then scene 67, oh, okay, cool, and then over here we're on this other thing. I don't know how they do it, honestly.
Well, Jeremy, I appreciate you being able to talk about this enthusiastically while avoiding any sort of detail about what's in the movie. We're gonna have to have you back to pick your brain once it's out. We're gonna have to have you back to talk about like specific sequences and moments, because it's just so much fun to geek out about this stuff, man. It's great.
It goes without saying that, for the next, I don't know, year and a half, that the fan theories about what's going to be happening in this movie are going to be absolutely off the charts insane. What was your take on all the fan theories that were happening for the 9 weeks that WandaVision was coming out? Were you going through and seeing what people were saying and being like, oh, that's kind of on the mark. Oh, that's Samsonite. That's way off. What was your experience going through that?
I just love it, because it means that the fans are engaging. You know what I mean? So it was fun. Like I have a bit of a problem. I read all of these sites. I read all of these articles and stuff.
Oh yeah, me too.
Sometimes I say articles in quotes. Like a lot of them are very, very thin. But no, it was great. I mean, hearing Mephisto this and what was the other one? Obviously Agatha Harkness got revealed relatively early, but they were right on the money with that. Everybody apparently in the show was Mephisto at one point or another. But it's great. I mean, the only thing that I'll say, I guess, to sort of put a bit of a codicil on that is, I kind of wish more of them had been right, so that some of the fans could have been like, haha, I guessed that, because it's fun to have that feeling. And also, as I think we all know, a few of them were a little disappointed that it was actually quite straightforward in the end.
Pretty much.
That it didn't bring in the entirety of the Fox X-Men movies.
Right.
And every mutant ever.
Or Reed Richards. Oh, that was the other one. Reed Richards.
Right. But it just came out today too, and maybe you can provide some insight, and maybe not. But I think it just came out today or yesterday that the identity of Monica's contact at some point is going to be revealed in a future MCU project. So that hasn't even been resolved. So
that is news to me.
There you go. If anybody ever corners you and asks you about that, you can be like, hey, they said it's gonna.
They said sometime later.
Was it me?
Jeremy, I loved WandaVision. I'm stoked about Doctor Strange. I cannot wait to see what that sequel does. But I would be lying if I did not say the thing I'm maybe most excited that you are working on is She-Hulk. She's one of my favorite characters of all time. I know you're a big Marvel and comic book guy. Can you tell us anything about working on She-Hulk? You've already started working on She-Hulk. That has already begun. Can you say that at least?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us anything about it? We know very, very little, but if you're familiar with the comic books, I think that it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine what the tone and stuff would be like. But can you talk about the show at all and what it's been like to work on it?
I don't feel safe talking too much about the show. Obviously, as you can imagine, it has been announced at this point that it's going to be a half hour, mostly comedy based sort of show. I can say that that's true. But that the other thing that I can say is that everything that you expect from, let me put it this way, I consider the Ant-Man movies to be comedies more so than the rest of them, and yet you still get all of that amazing Marvel stuff. And She-Hulk very much fits within that role.
If I can ask a little bit of like a follow-up to that, does your artistic style and the way you design the boards change or alter based on what the tone of the show is? Or are you mostly...
My drawings don't necessarily, but the way that I will put together a scene will, for sure. Yeah. Wow. There's, I draw a lot of action, drawing the type of stuff that I've worked on, obviously, but I'm getting to flex a lot of my comedy muscles on She-Hulk, and it turns out I'm actually kind of funny. There's a couple of gags that may end up being in the show. Obviously, they haven't shot anything yet, but let's say that I've provided some gags that have been favorable.
Oh my God.
So responded to favorably.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The awesome. Fact that you just said gags with like a She-Hulk show, that there could be She-Hulk related gags, I love that. That's beauty.
I should say that's an industry term.
Yes.
It basically means gags means ideas, but it doesn't mean jokes specifically, but it means ideas. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right. But
it's not somebody getting bonked on the head with a giant hammer. It's not. Yeah.
Well, and it's understandable why you sometimes have to make that clarification, because I think some people very easily, and websites are guilty of this too. They'll take any of those types of sound bites and they'll turn them into things that like are completely misinterpreting what you actually mean.
Yeah. Storyboard artist Jeremy Simser says show is only jokes all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So definitely not saying that.
Jeremy, you have gone from Heroes Reborn to Heroes Reforged today. We thank you, man. That's our we did it. But in all seriousness, man, we are so happy that we got to chat with you. You should be immensely proud of your work. We cannot wait to see your stuff in Doctor Strange and beyond. We're going to have to talk to you then and pick your brain about that stuff. Fingers crossed, we're going to get an Art of WandaVision beautiful book to showcase your work. In the meantime,
fingers crossed.
Where can people follow you and your work and support your stuff? Where can people find you online?
I mostly hang out on Twitter. That's sort of where I sort of chill. So at Jeremy Simser on Twitter. You can check out my website, which is jeremysimser.com. I like to keep it simple. And if you want to see me post something every 6 months, you can go to my Instagram.
Beautiful. Jeremy, thank you again, man. This has been an absolute blast. Best of luck in your future endeavors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and hopefully you get to work on all the stuff you get to work on, man. Best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on. This was super fun. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
You.
All right.